welcome to the Nebraska Writers Guild Author Chat Show. Tonight we have on our show John Achor. We're so excited to have you on the show, John.
Well, thanks for inviting me. And Victorine, I'd like to thank the Nebraska Writers Guild and especially you for putting these author chats on. If nothing else, it gets people out of the house, in quotes.
Yes, you're welcome. This has been so much fun to do this with all these different authors, and everybody has such great stories to share. And we're so happy that you're on the show tonight. Why don't you tell everybody about yourself?
Okay, so it's not distracting. I'll tell you what that sign behind me says if you can't quite read it. I put that up first week of quarantine here, and I said, "This too shall pass, unless it's a kidney stone." And that's a reference to a couple years ago when I had a few bouts with a kidney stone. My name is John Achor. Victorine pronounced it correctly. It's like a parcel of land, but I spell it funny, Achor. Nobody ever gets that right, so I just accept it. I spent my first career was in the Air Force. Spent 20 years as a pilot. They gave me a shovel, and they said, you can pilot here and pilot there. Flew airplanes from Piper Cubs up to 4-engine jets. Left the Air Force, went into real estate. I was in real estate sales, and then moved into real estate franchising. I was a trainer and a business consultant with those folks. I was also in computers. We bought our first computer from Radio Shack in 1979. It was the top of the line. It was Model 2. It had twice the memory that the first one had. This one had 16K.
Oh my goodness.
And from there I went on. I did some computer training and consulting. And my last day job was I was adjunct faculty with Mesa Community College, which is on the west side of Phoenix. So I came kind of late to writing. It was most of my writing was done after that.
Nice, great. So what kind of things do you write?
What sort of things do I write? Mostly mysteries and thrillers. I have 3 published mysteries out. They were traditionally published by a small press fellow I worked with, and I love Tommy, but Tommy and I got tired of bumping our heads together, so we parted company.
Yeah.
And I republished them on my own, or my own imprint it's Acacia Imprints. There's 3 of those featuring a 30-something lady. It's the typical divorced, low self-esteem, building it back up. I love to work with the characters and let them grow through the end to the end of the story, so that they're better off at the end of the story than they were at the beginning.
Yeah.
My thrillers go back a long ways. Actually, they're the first 2 books I completed. I'll do a little reading from one of them tonight. And the second one turned out to be a prequel to that first one I wrote. So we'll see how that goes. If this pandemic's ever over, maybe we can get them published.
Right. So what are the titles of your books?
The mysteries. Janet Ivanovich stole the numeric listings.
Mm-hmm.
Sue Grafton stole the alphabet. So I was casting around for a female character protagonist, and I said, I want something that shows that it is a series, and these 3 that are out are a series. So I came on the old nursery rhyme, 1, 2, button my shoe. So the first book is 1, 2, kill a few.
Nice.
The second one is 1, 2, kill some more. Excuse me, 3, 4, kill some more.
That's good.
Third one is 5, 6, deadly mix.
Good titles. Very exciting. And those are your mysteries, and you have some other books?
Right. I mentioned the thrillers. It's the first one I ever wrote with. It was the title is Assault on the Presidency, not the president, but the presidency. It's again, I'll read the blurb to you a little later. I don't want too many spoilers in here in the very beginning.
That's right. Keep us in suspense.
The second one is Assault on Reason, and that one came about because I sat down one time. I've heard people say you should not talk to your characters. You're supposed to be in charge. You're the author, but I don't believe in that. So I sat down with Alex, my protagonist. I said, "What the heck happened to your first wife? I know you were married. What happened?" And he told me what happened, and that became the second book.
Nice. That's great. How long does it take you to write a book?
Well, in these days, probably takes me twice as long as it used to. I'd say if my writing habits have gotten worse the older I get here, I'd say about 2 years. If I'm going working at it, maybe a little bit less, but I figure an average of a couple years. I was in the a one-day seminar with an author by the name of Val McDermott. She's Scottish, but she writes out of the UK, and her first book was the Mermaid Singing, and her books develop. She writes dark books. Her protagonist is Tony Hill. He's a psychologist, and it became. The TV series was called Blood in the Wire, Wire in the Blood. So maybe somebody out there has seen those or heard them. Anyway, she said it takes me 2 years, and I'm thinking to my quiet self, oh, it couldn't possibly take that long to write a book. And that was about the time that I was beginning to think. The thrillers are third-person male protagonists, and I said I wanted something different, so I'm going to switch to a female protagonist. And it's going to be first person, as a lot of mysteries are. And it took me 2 years just to develop Casey.
Yes.
I worked on her. In fact, she lives in Little Rock, Arkansas. If we had to move from Phoenix to Little Rock, she'd probably still be in Phoenix, too.
That's great.
Excuse me.
So where do you get your ideas for your books?
That's a fun one. How many times you been asked that, Victorine?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, and I tell people to just look around.
Mm-hmm.
You're surrounded with ideas, and one of the one that I like the most was, and this is a true story. I was having lunch in Arby's on Central Avenue in downtown Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I looked over, and there was a little old lady. I shouldn't call them a little old lady, so I'm in that category. But she had the white anklets turned down and the whole bit, and she's nursing her lunch along, and she's got a to-go bag. And I think, oh, poor thing, she's going to have to make two meals out of that. And she takes her trash and puts it in the trash container. And the lid bangs, and that startles everybody. And she goes back, picks up her bag, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I wonder what the bus schedules are along Central here. This was like July or August, and it is miserably hot. Yeah. And I think, if she has to wait very long, she's going to melt out there. Well, she didn't melt, because she walked out the door, climbed into a white convertible with the top down, and tooled out of the parking lot. So that short story is called Books and Covers. Don't judge the book by the cover. And it's just an object lesson in looking around and people watching, and there are ideas everywhere you look.
Oh yes, definitely. I agree with that one. So how many books have you written? You've said 5?
Got 5, actually 6. I'll talk later on too. I have a reasonably short memoir. I just got through the publishing process with Amazon called The Iron Pipe, and we'll
Nice.
talk about that. It's about an airplane called the Iron Pumpkin.
Ah, neat. So which one's your favorite? Do you have a favorite book, or are they like your children and you can't pick one?
Uh, yeah, I thought about that, and I suppose I th- unlike children, because you can't pick a favorite there. Unlike children, they're probably the last one you write is among towards the top. But the one I think I like the best is the second mystery, because it's got, I think, the best plot twist,
Oh,
and
nice.
it's a story of Casey starts getting postcards in the mail, and they're advertising murders that are upcoming.
Ooh. Very interesting.
No more spoiler.
Well, we have a question from one of our viewers. She's wondering, she likes the series title for the 1, 2, etc. Do you make the covers?
Like those, no, they were done by concierge marketing, uh, and there's sort of a theme to the covers themselves. 1, 2, kill a few. They're a little dark, and there's always a clue on the cover if you
Nice.
can uncover the clue. Uh, 3,
Very
4,
nice.
3, 4's. Well, I did the cover for the memoir, but that was because it didn't have to look professional. Whoops, a little close. And
Love
5,
it.
6. So there's a theme to the colors. The graphic artist at Concierge did a great job on those.
Those look great. Yes. Awesome. Do you have any suggestions for a new writer?
New writers. Okay. If I hope I come back. There I am.
Oh,
Did I
did you go
disappear?
away? You did not disappear
Yeah,
on my end.
my screen gave me the round circle of death.
Oh, no.
Um, new writers. If I'm going to be a smart aleck, they say, how do you finish a novel? And I say, well, you get an idea for a character and an idea for the plot, and then you sit down at your computer and you just keep typing until you get to those 2 magic words, the end.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not going to be a smart aleck, I find that new writers are sometimes awed by the length of a book and how many words they're going to have to crank out. So I'll describe a type page to them. I said a type page, if you're typing double spaced and the typical margins that editors like, there's about 250 words on a page. So 4 of those, you've got 1,000 words. Do you think you could write 4 of those pages in a week? And most people will say yes. I say, okay, now do that once a week for a year, and you've got a heck of a start towards a novel. You're past 50,000 words probably by then. So take it a little bit like eating an elephant, the old saw, one bite at a time. Just keep plugging. Um, the other thing I would tell new writers is to find groups. I think there's a lot of groups within the Nebraska Writers Guild.
Yes.
I was extremely fortunate when we lived in Phoenix. I ran into a bunch of writers. Most of them were new, but there was one lady that was from, and she started a critique group that you'll never learn more about writing than you will from that critique group.
Very true.
People who give you honest feedback, they don't backbite, they just don't like this. Had the lady one time, I'm writing a female protagonist. I do a pretty good job of it. But Pug says, John, that's a guy thing. So I said, okay, that's got to come out. So when you can get honest feedback, you'll improve.
Yes. That's great advice. We have another question. Do you
Okay.
primarily sell print or digital books?
All 3 of the mysteries are out in both the trade paperbacks that I showed, and they're also available as ebooks. I'm not sure I think with the thrillers, we'll probably go the same route
Mhm.
once this is over, whatever it is. The memoir, I'm not sure about because it's got a ton of pictures in it, and I'm not sure how it would come out as an ebook. Uh, I would think on a phone, it wouldn't be too good. If you're working off a tablet, it might be okay.
Mhm.
I need to examine that a bit before we make that decision.
Sure, sure. So who are your favorite authors?
Well, I've already mentioned them. the the mistress of the alphabet,
Yes.
and we'll never know what Z was. Sue Grafton.
Yes.
And if you want a good female mystery writer with a bit more humor, Kinsey Milhone's a total professional. If you want some more humor in it, you go with Janet Ivanovich.
Yes.
I would give my eye teeth to come up with a character of hers, Grandma Mazer. If you've never read Janet Ivanovich, read at least one. Grandma Mazer goes to funerals for things to do on dull days. And
so
they're serious mysteries, but a little more on the humor side. I think if I was on the continuum from Sue Grafton to Janet Ivanovich, I'd be a little closer to the Janet Ivanovich end. I try to keep some light humor going throughout, so people can have a laugh or two here and there.
That's great.
On the male side, I have to say Lee Child and his Jack Reacher series. Now I'm going to be a name dropper. When we lived in Phoenix, we got to know Barbara Peters, who still owns and runs the Poison Pen mystery bookstore and the Poison Pen Press. Through her, we got to meet more mystery writers than you can shake a stick at. And all three of the writers I've mentioned, Sue Grafton, Janet Ivanovich, and Lee Child, we've met in person.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun. In fact, I wrote a blurb on my blog, and I titled it "Name Dropper," and I tried to come up with all the names of the author. P.D. James, the British author who died a few years back. At the time, Dame James was in her early 80s, and Barbara convinced her to fly over from the UK and come to a book signing at her store. Barbara was invited to participate in symposiums in the UK, so she's fairly well known in the mystery realm.
That's fantastic. Awesome. So we have another question. Have you ever incorporated anything from your military service into any of your writing?
Let's see. My last assignment in the Air Force as a lieutenant colonel was in the Pentagon. Assault on the Presidency is, Alex is a lieutenant colonel stationed in the Pentagon.
Awesome.
So the answer is yes on that side. Not so much on Casey's side, because being the female, she and I didn't have similar jobs, but we had fun. In fact, if you can see the logo on this shirt, it says a Casey Fremont mystery, and there's some whoops. That's the hardest thing for me to do, is point correctly in this thing.
I know, it's backwards.
There are footprints up the side of it, and those represent her pet cat, PK.
Oh,
PK
awesome.
stood for Psycho Kitty. So
that's great.
I like a little humor in there.
I love it. We have another question. Do you write every day?
I'm going to take the Fifth Amendment on that. No, I'll be honest. I do not. For years, I did. I would say today, every 2 or 3 days, I write something, whether it's an active book or not. But I try to get something going in my mind to keep my mind on the writing. I don't have the concentration. I think that leaves you with age.
I know what you mean. Do you write longhand or on a computer?
Both. I am fortunate when the idea hits me, I can write anywhere and have. Uh, I've written in coffee shops, bagel shops. I love casinos. They usually have a place where I can sit down and do some writing without being interrupted. While my wife is very good beating up slot machines, and she doesn't like me to hang over her shoulder because I bring her bad luck. So, so I've done a lot of writing longhand. That's fun too. I remember Einstein Brothers Bagels in Phoenix. I wrote almost a whole short story based on a man, a woman, and a child who drove in an old beat-up Toyota.
Oh, wow.
Again, where you get your stories, wherever you are. The computer, I'd say probably 75, 80% is done on the computer. Though I did read a lady who was an expert, she said writing longhand is better. It's more closely connected to the brain than your fingertips on a keyboard, and I can believe that. I do kind of get a kick out of writing longhand sometimes.
Cool. So, have you ever written a scene that made you cry?
Yeah, I had to stop and think about those. I feel that if I get to that point, I've really touched something emotional, and I feel I'm really lucky if I can do that about every 100 or 200,000 words.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, I have. I could tell you one about it's the third mystery, but I don't want to throw the spoiler out there. I'll tell you about a poem I wrote. I don't do a whole lot of poetry, but I did write one that I really like. It's called Pea Ridge, and Pea Ridge is a Civil War battlefield in Arkansas. I don't even know who won. But we stopped there on our way to Arkansas, and we walked over some of the grounds, and you looked out over the grassy fields, and two lines of a poem came to me. I wrote them down so I'd have them handy. Into my head, I hear the crack of musketry, and I hear the cannons roar. I never figured fighting was such an awful chore. Those two lines popped into my head that day, standing there. It took me 4 years to finish it.
Wow.
But and that is one I cannot read aloud. I touched something. I think it's probably on the order of the futility of war and how we've learned to kill so many young people.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't read that one aloud.
Wow, that's cool. Do you listen to music while you write?
Yes. Most of the time I have something on. I just recently added a little to it, but for a long while I wanted some music. I looked around and I got the soundtracks from 3 movies. And excuse me just a second.
Yes.
First one I grabbed was Quigley Down Under, an old Western in Australia. Monuments Men, which is a story of the soldiers who rescued stolen art in Europe during World War II. And the third one was The Great Escape. I figure probably most people have heard that. And I looked at those 3 and I said, what do those 3 have in common? And I decided the theme of all 3 of them is perseverance. Hmm. So I like to have those playing in the background low, and that's another thing to tell that new writer: have some perseverance. Don't. Yeah. If your mind goes blank, take a break and go back to it. Persevere.
That's good. Very good advice. How do you find the names for your characters?
I can show you those books over on that bookcase. The first one I bought was The Best Baby Name Book in the World, and that is the title of it. It's amazing what you can get out of that. Yeah. And a lot of the first names are good for last names as well. Yeah. Since I've added a number of books, I have one up there that even is broken down by ethnicity. So if you're looking for an Ethiopian person's name, I needed let's see. No, I didn't have that book when I wrote Assault on the Presidency because I needed some names for Thailand police officers. But there, things like that are good. Some rules I try to follow. Don't use the same initial for the first and last name. Sam Spade was great, but Dashiell Hammond used that up. An awful lot of writers seem to be falling back on that. Sarah Smith, John Jones. I like a different initial for the first and last name. The type of name, consonants are hard. Mm-hmm. Vowels are softer. So I like the example I like to use is Lawrence Block, who has 5 or 6 mystery series out, but he has a hard-boiled private eye, and he has a second-story burglar. And here are the 2 names: Bernie Rodenbar and Matt Scudder. Now you tell me which one is the private eye. It's good old Matt.
I love
it. The consonants kind of hammer him home. So I try to use some of those rules. I would not use names similar. Let's go back to the Sally and Sarah. I would not have a Sally and a Sarah in the same book because I guarantee you somebody's going to confuse the 2 and you're going to miss the point.
That would be me.
Yeah, in Assault on the Presidency, there's he's Secret Service guy. He's a fairly important secondary character. I changed his last name right in the middle of the book. Yeah. Didn't even realize it. Thank heavens for editors.
Right.
So follow some rules, pick them out. What sounds good? What typically I think as parents look for names that went together fairly well. Mm-hmm. So as you're picking them out of the phone books, are great. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of names in there. Use the tail end because nobody ever looks back there at the Zwickis.
I love it. We have another question from a Facebook user. How long have you been a member of the Guild, and what positive memories do you have about being a Guild member?
I haven't joined and I don't like them. No. I'm trying to remember when I think I joined about, let's see, we've been here 4 years. I think I joined about the first year we were here. So somewhere between 3 and 4 years. What do I like about them? I like the people I've met.
Oh, wonderful.
I've always I have never gone to a seminar or a conference without meeting somebody I liked and learning something new. Wow. Or having something I should have known reinforced.
Yes.
They do a great job here, and I know Charles pulled his hair out trying to decide what to do with this year. And my email to him, I'm sure if you saw it, it was a little nasty, but I think he made the right decision.
Yeah,
about that. It's hard to pass those things up and leave a hole in the. In fact, we've gotten. This is today is our 65th wedding anniversary. And one of the cards we got from a daughter said, "Happy 65th anniversary. This is the one during the pandemic."
Well, happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It's so nice of you to come on our show during your anniversary night. So tell your wife, thank you.
I will do that. She is, I'm the writer. She's the reader. Nice. In a bad week, she'll only read about 3 novels.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned poetry a little bit. What kind of other poetry have you written?
I prefer rhyming poetry, although probably most of what I have written is free verse. And I finally learned, I had a lady in a critique group in Hot Springs, and Margaret and I used to argue because she wrote free verse and I would just to needle her. I said, Margaret, poetry has to rhyme. And it would go from there. So it was all good natured. My favorite poet probably in that category of rhyming is Robert Service. It's called The Bard of the North. If you don't recognize his name, you probably recognize the cremation of Sam McGee and the shooting of Dan McGrew, 2 of his more favorite ones. We were fortunate to be in Alaska in 1967, which I think was the 100th anniversary of the state. And there was a gent there who would stand at the gazebo, and I was told that he could recite Robert Service from heart without repeating a poem for 8 hours.
Wow.
I didn't stick around to judge it, but he definitely has written that much. And like I say, it's rhyming, and I like those the best. That's just me. I'm that old.
Well, would you like to read some of your work for us?
Of course.
We would love that.
Well, I've already shown you the covers. Instead of doing a straight reading from one, what I thought I would do is tonight is introduce Casey, Alex, and me.
Great.
Out of those books. I'm going to use the blurb in each of them as a start, and then read a little bit into the book. This is from 1-2 Kill a Few, which is the first Casey Fremont mystery. The back cover reads, struggling to recover from a disastrous marriage and contentious divorce, Casey Fremont tries to make ends meet by filling her days with exhausting temp jobs. She sets a goal of personal and mental renewal, but suddenly finds herself struggling to stay alive in a dangerous riddle of falling bodies. Casey's on her way to a job interview when a body falls. I'm a professional writer. I'm not a professional reader. She was on her way to a job interview when a body falls from above and lands within inches of her. Days later, a co-worker dies in a similar manner, and a close friend of hers is kidnapped. Now Casey can't avoid being dragged into the case. Can an amateur sleuth with a few odd clues and sparse evidence find and stop this shrewd killer before someone else dies? Chapter 1. My name's Casey Fremont. Lots of folks shorten that nickname even further to KC. I used to go by those initials, but got tired of answering the question, does Casey stand for something? Well, of course it stands for something, dim bulb. I even tried Ms. Fremont, but that made me sound too old. My mother wasn't frightened by the initial imps, though something must have scared her. I've never been able to get her to tell me where she came up with Acacia, which is the long version of Casey. This morning started out so well, I thought I was on a roll. I hoped the rest of the day would be as great. It wasn't, but how could I know it'd be raining bodies by noon? Let's move over to Assault on the Presidency. This is don't have a book. This is a mock-up of the cover. Everything's backwards on this.
Looks great.
Again, Concierge did a great job. Alex Hilliard is the protagonist. He's a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. And the blurb, like I said, I wrote this probably 30 years ago, or going on that. I didn't want it to sound like it was current day. So I added to the blurb, an intro to the blurb a little bit. With Watergate in the distant past and long before the current denizens of the U.S. Capitol arrived, these characters populated the District of Columbia and left us this dilemma. After 8 years in office, the president will do anything, including murder, to retain the presidency and his power, unless the Air Force officer who uncovers the plot can stop his commander-in-chief. Lieutenant Colonel Alex Hilliard, a USAF pilot, is stationed at the Pentagon. He identifies a plot against the president-elect, recruits his girlfriend and several military friends to assist him in his battle to foil the conspiracy. Betrayed by a spy in the president-elect's inner circle, danger follows Alex to the point he questions his abilities and whether he can save the lives of the newly elected officials. This is not written in chapters. There's a prologue, an epilogue, and 5 books. The sections are separated by dates. and I can't get by this one without being a teacher. I have a little short seminar on my computer that I've done, and it's part of the title is specificity and the two A's. The two A's are adjectives and adverbs. Specificity is don't write in generalities. Use specifics. And I don't know that I always get it right the first time, but I could have started this with, he got into his car. What do we know? It's a male. He has a car. And there we are. Instead, I wrote, only minutes ago, Lieutenant Colonel Alex Hilliard folded his lanky frame into the Mustang. I think we know a little bit more about him from an intro like that. It goes on, now he eased his car to a stop before departing the north parking lot. As he checked traffic, he could see the building over his shoulder. The massive gray outline of the Pentagon loomed behind him. An icy, prickly sensation crawled up his spine. He realized this would, in all likelihood, be the most important briefing he would ever give. It's going to be a damn long drive, night and day, 24 hours. Drive 250 miles one way. Tell the man a story I even have trouble believing. The drive will be the easiest. Telling him won't be that difficult. Convincing him may take more time than I have. After that, all I have to do is retrace my steps and be back to work. So he's off to tell the president-elect something.
Nice.
The third, where I'll tell a little something about myself, is
nice.
It's called The Iron Pumpkin. The blurb I used on this one was, mystery and thriller writer John Achor turns his hand to a first-person account of his last flight in a one-of-a-kind, four-engine reconnaissance airplane. I call my story The Iron Pumpkin. It is about Rivet Ball, an RC-135S Strategic Air Command one-of-a-kind reconnaissance bird, and her last flight, which ended on 13 January 1969. Airplanes and 40-foot cliffs do not go well together, but all 18 walked away. In the Iron Pumpkin, I concentrate on her last flight when we encountered the wee bitching hour just after midnight. My description of it was, with only 30 minutes of that day having passed into history, we lived through the longest few seconds of our lives. On the following page is a picture of me wearing a special t-shirt, polo shirt, and a mug. And that mug was presented to me by Team 2, the back-enders. And it's engraved Major John Achor, 19 August 67 to 13 January 69, Rivet Ball, 29 sorties from Team 2. And then I stole a song from World War II called Bless 'Em All, changed the words a little bit. Bless 'em all, bless 'em all, bless 'em all, the hale, the injured, the short, and the tall. Here's to the survivors from the front to the rear, and bless that chaplain who brought us the beer. Bless them all, bless them all, bless them all. There's nothing like being an honorary Team 2 Raven. Thanks, guys. Raven is a nickname for electronic warfare officers, which was what those rated officers in the back end were. And I tack on here variations and memories. I swear the chaplain brought beer. Others say it was combat ration whiskey. Maybe it was both. Either way, I'll stick with beer because it's a better rhyme. The Iron Pumpkin name came, we were in the dispensary being treated after the accident, and a gentleman from the tower came racing in and said, did you get the word that the last 2,000 feet of runway were not cleared? And my navigator 2 said, what difference did it make? By that time, we'd already turned into a pumpkin. That's where the name came from. The title stuck. If you can see this a bit, that's what she looked like in more pristine condition.
Wow.
And that's what she looked like at the bottom of the cliff.
Wow. That is amazing. And no one died.
Nobody died.
That's
All of us
amazing.
walked away. We titled that "We All Walked Away," and one guy said, "Hell, we ran." So that's a little bit about Casey Fremont, my female protagonist, mystery gal, Alex Hilliard, my thriller feller, and me.
Awesome.
So I'll wrap up the reading there, Victorine.
Wonderful. So where do people buy your books?
Amazon's the best place. You can, if you don't remember the titles, if you just search on my name, be sure to spell it correctly, Achor. You can just search on Amazon and it will probably get you into the right area. The first two are also available on Audible. Excuse me, that's not Audible. They're audio books, but they're the off-breed. If you want that kind, wait till they put them on sale because they put an outrageous price on them. I wouldn't buy one myself, to be honest.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I think they charge too much for the audio books, but I did run into a great gal, Aisling Gray, read the first two Casey mysteries, and I've got them on my phone, and they're out there available too.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us. We really appreciate that. Next week, we will have Kelly Breckenhoff on the show. Kelly has a mystery series and a children's picture book series. So we're excited to see her diversity.
Sounds great.
Yes. Well, thank you, everybody, for coming and watching. And if anybody wants to see more of these author chat shows, just hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Or if you're in the Nebraska Writers Guild community group, you can see them every Wednesday night. Thank you all for coming.